What's going on, Bulls fans? First off, happy Friday. Welcome into the Bulls Report. I'm your host for today's show, Patrick Seatman. And on today's show, we're going to be talking about the Bulls' possibility of bringing in Chris Paul. There was conflicting reports starting off with Chris Haynes here. He had the news a couple days ago. He said, breaking. The Phoenix Suns have notified star Chris Paul that he will be waived, making the future Hall of Famer one of the top free agents this offseason. League sources tell NBA on TNT. But then a little conflicting reports here. We moving over to Shams here. He said the Suns and Chris Paul are exploring multiple options, including a trade, stretching his contract, or waiving and re-signing him in free agency. Phoenix is expected to discuss trades ahead of Paul's June 28th contract date. So overall, the Phoenix Suns, they look like they are moving on from the star point guard. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to be diving into if the Bulls could be that team that can maybe sign for him or trade for him. Whatever it is, it seems like the Suns are kind of done with the Chris Paul era in Phoenix. I'm going to be discussing how he would fit with the Chicago Bulls if they were to bring him in. But guys, first off, join the Bulls Report family. We're closing in on 2,000 subs. Everybody who's joined us so far, thank you so much. These are a ton of fun to do. These are honestly the best part of my day is getting up on here and just talking about my favorite team that I watched growing up my entire life. So thank you guys so much for everybody who's subscribed so far. If you guys haven't, go down there, hit that subscribe button for daily Bulls videos. The number one question I think you need to ask when discussing Chris Paul is what's left? How much does Chris Paul have left in the tank? Obviously, he's 37 years old, going on 38, and you really got to think about what type of role Chris Paul will be playing on his new team. I don't think he's a starter in the NBA in terms of a 30 to 35 minutes. I think he can still obviously be a starter, but I think it would be in that 20 to 25 minute range. And then I could also see another possibility where a team can bring him in and be like, hey, you run the second unit, you come off the bench, and I could honestly see Chris Paul maybe next year possibly being in the sixth man of the year conversation if he really excels in that role. But this past season, Chris Paul, he was pretty solid. I mean, he still had a hell of a year. He's always been a really efficient player in the NBA, 44% from the field, always had a really solid three-point shot, 37.5% from deep. But again, it's the playmaking with Chris Paul. I mean, there's a reason they call him the point god. He's still 9 assists a game at the age of 37. Chris Paul is one of my favorite players growing up, but can he replicate what he did in these 59 games this year? Can he do it again on another team next season? That's the question with Chris Paul because, hey, 14 points a game with 9 assists, and he's always been a solid defender as well, a very sneaky, just smart, savvy defender. Obviously, he's not like a guy like Kawhi or Paul George that's really going to sit in that chair and lock you up, but he's great with taking charges, those little poke-around, reach steals. He's always been fantastic at that. But now we got to talk about how he would fit with the Chicago Bulls. Obviously, the Bulls have that choice of what direction you're going to go this offseason. Are we going to try to contend or are we going to rebuild? The Bulls have been stuck in this NBA purgatory where they're not competing for championships, but they're also not bad enough to be possibly getting a top pick in the NBA draft and getting that superstar. The Bulls have many questions. And right now, if you're taking a look at the Bulls roster as a whole, they got questions around Ayo Dosunmu. He is a restricted free agent. I do expect the Bulls to bring him back. But then Vooch, the man in the middle, the 5 for the Bulls, he's a free agent. Right now the talks are from Joe Crowley of the Chicago Sun-Times. The Bulls are working on a 3-year deal to bring back Nikola Vucevic. And then you still got DeMar, LaVine, Patrick Williams. He's going to get a lot more tick this year. But then you even got questions around like, are you going to bring back Patrick Beverley, Kobe White, Caruso, Drummond? Like the Bulls have a lot of questions in what direction they're going to go. But if you just take like what it is right now and how the Bulls roster is, I actually think Chris Paul fits very well with what the Bulls need. On that whole roster, I love Ayo, but is Ayo a true point guard? Not necessarily yet in his NBA career. I think the Bulls, and we saw how successful they were with Lonzo Ball on that when he was fully healthy, and they had a true point kind of orchestrating the offense. The Bulls were a very efficient team, a very just efficient offense, and they were a lot of fun to watch because no matter what you think of DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, the dudes can just straight up get buckets. They're two of the best bucket getters. You throw them the ball, go make a move, go get the ball in the rim. They're two of the best at that in the entire NBA, and having a guy like Chris Paul kind of orchestrate that, I think it would be very, very fun to watch. But I'll toss it your guys' way, and I got more thoughts here in a second. Would you sign CP3? Obviously, there's no confirmed reports that he is technically a free agent yet, but would you sign Chris Paul? Would you bring him on and have him be the next point guard for the Chicago Bulls? Give me an S for sign or give me a P for pass. So ideally, if the Bulls were going to bring in CP3, I would want them to bring in CP3, but then also move off of DeMar DeRozan. I think this would be the Bulls' honestly best chance to win games next season. I think we've seen in the NBA playoffs this past season, role players matter. Obviously, role players matter every single year in the NBA playoffs, but especially this past season, we've seen role players carry teams to the NBA Finals. You look at the Miami Heat run. Yes, Jimmy Butler, Bam, they drive the ship. They're the reasons they are there. But those Miami Heat role players, what Caleb Martin did in the Eastern Conference Finals, what Duncan Robinson has done in stretches for the Miami Heat, I think it's been great for them. So I think the Bulls could kind of get by with a big three of CP3, LaVine, and Vooch, and then let your role players develop. Like guys like Patrick Williams, he could be a tremendous role player and contribute to winning at the highest level. But Chris Paul over the last 4 seasons, man, he's still great. Like, I mean, even just 2 years ago, like 15 points a game and 11 assists a game on 50% from the field in that 2021-2022 season. Like that, those are great, great numbers. I mean, then if you look at the Thunder season when he had 18 points a game, around 7 assists, 2 steals per game. I don't know if Chris Paul has that left in the tank for the Bulls, but what he did for the Thunder team that season, they were a young team, they were kind of disorganized, and they kind of just played an AAU style of basketball, which the Bulls have typically played the past couple of seasons, is kind of just chaotic offense. After Lonzo got hurt, they need that true point guard, and I think Chris Paul could be that. And also, you could just talk about the mentorship side of it. Like, the Bulls do have 2 young guards, Ayo Dosunmu, Kobe White. Both those guys, they grew up watching a guy like Chris Paul. I just honestly think if you bring him in and have him groom Ayo, like, because Ayo has the physical attributes to be a really good point guard. It's just the skill side of it and kind of the mental side of the game that Ayo Dosunmu kind of struggles with. So I think if you bring in Chris Paul, let Ayo kind of get under his tutelage and kind of take him under his wing, I think they could be a great kind of combination here. So overall, I do think Ayo, I think could be the number 1 beneficiary of a guy like Chris Paul bringing on to the Bulls. As always, guys, I am on Twitter. I'm talking about the Bulls all offseason long. Follow me at Pat Seatman on Twitter. I'll be your one-stop shop for all Bulls news and rumors on that side of social media. But my prediction for the Chicago Bulls, I think the Bulls will keep LaVine and Vucevic this year. I don't see them moving off them this offseason because why would they? Like, you can bring back LaVine and Vooch and then still trade them at next year's trade deadline. Like, I don't think the Bulls necessarily think they're in a rush, and I promise you they are looking at that post-All-Star game record when the Bulls were about 5 games over 500, and they're thinking, you know what? That could be us. Like, we could replicate that in this next season, and I do think they're going to try to move off DeRozan and try and compete. I look at a team like the Dallas Mavericks. They have the 10th overall pick in this year's draft to say, you'll take DeMar, get another scorer next to Luka because you don't know if Kyrie is for sure coming back. Just hit up Dallas or hit up one of those teams that are falling in that 10 to 18 range. Say, we'll give you a proven scorer, a proven leader in the NBA. Throw them DeMar, and then you finally get a draft pick and get another young piece on this roster, because overall this team's got talent. Like, you can't deny the talent that's on screen right now. Like, Zach LaVine, for however you feel about him, he is probably a top 10, top 12 just scorer in the NBA. Just talk about purely getting buckets. You talk about it at all 3 levels. The 3-point shooting, the mid-range, the getting to the rim with how athletic he is. Zach LaVine, I think if you put a guy like Chris Paul next to him, we can almost see his game take another level. We saw what Chris Paul done for a guy like Devin Booker. Devin Booker and Zach LaVine, very similar players in the NBA. So LaVine, Booker, I think you could kind of compare them to kind of say how Chris Paul could come in and impact the Bulls as well. But guys, make sure you guys are subscribed to the Bulls Report. We're going to be your one-stop shop for all Bulls news and rumors. Overall, on the idea of Chris Paul, I'm actually all in for it. I think it would be a good decision for the Bulls no matter what direction they go this offseason. My best case scenario, my kind of dream offseason would be they move off DeMar DeRozan, bring in Chris Paul. That's what I would want them to do. But we'll see you guys next time. Go Bulls.